How do you feel about the importance of fashion's role in being culturally relevant or even shaping culture?
You know, I hesitate to put responsibility on anyone or even sectors. Now, that being said, I do think that fashion can be an agent of galvanizing and of enlightening people. I think it can be an agent, but I hesitate to put that kind of like responsibility on anyone or any particular like artistic discipline. But it's always beautiful when art can do that, and art does do that.
But then what do you think your role is in like playing this part? Like you said, like you don't want to put responsibility on any brand or any person, but you agree that it's actually having an impact in shaping culture.
Yeah.
So what do you think you are playing in that part?
Lead by example. You know, for me, I see the beauty and the difference in people. You know, I think that which makes you different is what makes you special. And we just need a little bit more of that.
That's an interesting point you make about a creative director role as a lens on the world or lens on communities that are happening around you. And I think in this moment, there's a lot of confusion about what a creative director actually is, because in different ecosystems and different markets, it means a different thing. What would you say is your view on, you know, Louis Vuitton is a house with codes and heritage. Do you see your role as kind of connecting that past, like vibrant, rich past with the future in some way, kind of being that bridging force?
It's more like I work with 55 different departments, over 2,500 soldiers. I call them soldiers. But this is like a love movement. But you have to conduct. You know, it's like a huge orchestra. You know, and it's my job is to make sure that like everything is in harmony. You know, and to weed out any of the dissonance. And just make sure that like it's a harmonious thing and that we move as a unit. And that's been such a pleasure. You know, masterful artisans I'm surrounded by. So like, it's great. You know?
Now that you've been on the inside for a period of time learning from these artisans, what has really surprised you about some of the people you've worked with, or has anyone said anything to you or asked you anything that really gave you pause that you didn't expect?
It just continues to be a dream. I think that's probably the most striking thing to me. Like I never experienced anything like that. It just continues to be a dream. But like if I don't have a job, but if I had one, it'd be very easy and hard at the same time, which is not to wake up. That's it. All we do is dream. We dream and make dreams happen, and we make manifest of dreams. We bring them to fruition.
You know, it's very interesting for me that you mentioned harmony, this word, so many times, because harmony is actually a very important concept in Chinese culture as well. Like we care about this, and also love in a general term is also something like China is trying to embrace a lot in our modern culture. But then I think you are aware that in the fashion industry and creative industry, there has been a lot of discussion about a lack of diversity and inclusion at different levels. So I was wondering, like, what do you think is the change that is necessary to happen in order to tackle the current issue or just make the fashion system become better?
You know, that's a question that really boils down to like equality, your question. But I think that there's an interesting answer that has nothing to do with equality. It's equity. It's having more people of color to have their own businesses and to have their own brands, and for the consumer base to support them. And that's how we're really going to diversify in this world. Like what we can't do as people of color is continue to try to find a seat at a table where we may or may not be welcome.
Sure.
My whole thing is like, there's room under the sun for everyone. Why don't we just build our own tables, right?
So that's what you're doing.
Yeah, and welcome who we may.
And in this role, how do you find opportunities to empower people to build their own tables, so to speak?
Well, we do that with Black Ambition, which the house is very supportive of. It's run by like Felicia Hatcher. and they're like totally crushing it. But that provides like strategic scaffolding and resources to Black and brown concepts. And I think we just need more of that. Again, equality is awesome. Our parents and their parents and their parents, they fought for equality. But I think, equity is much more formidable and powerful, because when you have equity, you don't have to ask anyone, can you have a seat at the table? It's your table. And you can make as many chairs as you like. Your own cap table.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's interesting what you say, because you're right in this moment that Asian voices, the whole Eastern Hemisphere, a lot of generations of work, of creative culture, and in China, certainly thousands of years of creative culture, we feel is kind of concentrating in this moment and manifesting in this moment where, we've just had our Vogue China Fashion Fund, inaugural Fashion Fund winners announced recently. And it's the first time that we've really felt the world is paying attention to these new Chinese creative voices. And I know that they'd be so curious to hear from you what advice you have for them as creatives.
Oh, first and foremost, focus on your light. Be creative. None of this matters if you're not doing something that is really interesting and striking. Focus on that. And with the ubiquitous nature of the internet, everyone's connected, so it'll get out there. There's no such thing as a greatest kept secret. If we just continue to focus on being great, it's very different than it was 30, 40 years ago.
Sure.
Everything was like in a vacuum. But now, like I said, because of the internet, it's different. If you're really talented, they will find you. Somebody will find you. Somebody will get behind you. And just being over here and just seeing everything that's going on, man, it's really your time. It's your time. Like, nothing is stopping you. Nothing can dim the light. And by the way, the light that I'm referring to is the light of the universe. Right? We know that, there's a day and a night, but the sun does not set. The earth is just spinning. Right? And when you know that, you realize the sun is always shining. So it doesn't matter if it's nighttime and you can't see it. Doesn't mean that the sun is not shining in your direction. So once you know that, you realize you don't need the light or the acceptance from
Sure. Like validation
the world at large. Like, just shine and be bright and be magnetic, be great. That goes back to the question that you asked me about, like, the young creatives here and what they need to hear. Just be magnetic.
But I was wondering, you also said that there are a lot of setbacks that people might experience during the process that they're trying to fight their light or do things that they think is right. So what kind of mindset they should have in order to keep focusing on, like, fighting their light?
Well, those blockages and those purposeful disadvantages are set up in a system that you don't really need. You don't need it anymore. We used to. It's like for a very long time, the record industry would make you feel like they were the complete gateway for people to know you.
Sure.
And now you have more artists making music that are not signed to a label and making so much money. And it's beautiful. I don't want to measure it across, like, it's more like millionaires under 30, like, there's billionaires under 30.
Right.
But we're not going to measure it that way. What we're going to say is there is an incredible population of Gen Zers and, like, even millennials who are, like, just writing their own checks. They're carving their own paths. They're, blazing their own trails. And it's a really beautiful, karmic thing to watch. It's like kismet to me.
That makes sense. I mean, do you feel that social media as an ecosystem has a negative or positive or indifferent impact on luxury as a category now that you're running this ship?
I think good, bad, and good, bad, and indifferent.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
In what sense?
I mean, it's good in certain ways, is not so good in other ways. And then there's a part of it where it just kind of, like, doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah. But I think that like there's a lot of artists that are born in social media, and I think there's a lot of fashion designers that are born in social media, and they sort of design for the gram, you know? And they're artists that make music for the gram. It's like a very different thing, but it's fine.
But you don't
I'm not a fashion designer.
Sure, okay. How would you classify yourself if not a fashion designer?
Oh, creative director for sure. Yeah. And when I first came to the house, when I sat down with Bernard Arnault, the first thing I did was lay down like the 5 different pillars of what I wanted, what I saw the house doing with my leadership. And then we talked about like core elements and codes that I wanted to change and essentially level up from where they were. And he agreed on all of it. And everything that you guys are seeing are all the things that I've presented.
And this Hawaiian or island vacation that you brought to Hong Kong, how does that vehicle kind of empower the creatives in your community or the consumer?
Well, it's a pre-collection, right? And usually there's no shows around pre-collections. There's not a lot of shows around pre-collections.
Sure.
And I wanted to make it so that our pre-collections felt like main shows.
Okay.
You know, like I wanted it to feel like, because usually at least for us, usually pre-collections are like, you know, a lot of beige, a lot of like navy blue, a lot of black, a lot of gray, a little bit of cream, some tan. And it's very like, you know, middle-aged, like professional guy on the go, you know? It's like a character on Succession or something.
Sexy.
And I was like, you know, let's level it up. Let's make this pre-collection feel like it's one of the main shows. We obviously incorporated all the codes, but I wanted to shake the tree a bit, you know, because I think that can, because it's also like, it's where they do a big bulk of the business because it's so like middle of the road and centrist. But I still wanted to shake it up a bit so that we are leveling, you know, the consumer up and the client up, like not just a couple steps, you know, like, oh, we're going to step it up. No. We wanted to floor it up. I wanted to take them up several floors. So there's a lot of incorporation of a lot of pearls. There's a lot of embroidery. This jacket is like, you know.
I was looking at your jacket.
Yeah, this jacket is going to be, this is made to order. But this was like to commemorate my trip here in China. So it just talks.
So
shows all
great.
the city.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
thought it's one of the pieces for the upcoming Chinese New Year collection. No, so it's like the unique piece.
We just knew that like it's going to be
dragon.
the year of the dragon.
Yeah.
So we started there. I wanted my Asian siblings to know, like, listen, I appreciate everything that you've sown into me, and that you know just supported me on every platform I've ever existed on. And this was a new platform for me, and that I intend to share it.
And maybe one last question on menswear. So, I mean, you have been heading up this menswear department for Louis Vuitton for a while. How do you perceive menswear category in 2023, and how do you see it evolved going forward?
For me, I know on paper it's menswear, but I just make clothes for humans. I learned that, you know, being over at Chanel, I used to wear things that I felt like I could pull off. Not because they were less effeminate, but if I thought I could wear it, then I would wear it, you know, a sweater here or a belt there or whatever. And I used to wear Celine when Phoebe was there. Like I wore a lot of that. I was super early on that. But I think that's my job, right? That's my responsibility to bring that energy to this menswear appointment, is to make clothes for humans. I don't know. Sometimes like culture lets you know what it wants to be. And I know why we have been welcoming, not accepting. There's a very big difference between
Facts.
welcoming and accepting, right? Some people are accepting. But we've been very welcoming to humans. I think they just always want me to be respectful and not step on the toes of like, you know, the women's department, be respectful of our siblings there.
Sure.
But I pride myself on just like making things for humans.
And to wrap up, what excites you about the future?
God. Yeah. There's nothing more exciting than that.
That's a great answer.
But right, though, it's the universe. Like, where are we without it? Like, it's just not even possible. But the idea that the universe continues to provide me with these opportunities that I can't put into words, just like dreams, right? A lot of times there are dreams that you've had that you just can't put into words.
Yeah, and never planned for. And a detour becomes a main road.
Yes.